Hello and welcome to another Read With Me session. I'm yours truly, Isabel Bedell, and I'm here to read with you this amazing book, Good to Great by Jim Collins. We are on chapter 2, which is level 5 leadership. And what I do like about this book is the fact that it's built to last, which is the second book that Jim Collins wrote, or the first book, but now he's calling this book kind of like the prequel. Like, you should read this book, this one. You should read this book before you read Built to Last. That way you understand how to go from the fundamentals to the more technical aspects of what makes a business or even a human being, you yourself, as a better leader, as a better executor, as a better mentor, as a better individual in business and in life. And what I really love about this is that it's based on research, like 5 years worth of research, like 21 person team to just build the context of this book. Like, it's a serious project. It's not just a book. And I feel like when it comes to business and in life, you should take things seriously with accurate data and not just base it on emotions that are kind of like appearing in your life. Because yes, feelings and emotions are important, but if they rule every single thing about your life, then you won't be able to reach the next level of what you aspire to be. Like, an example of that would be if you feel like you don't want to you know work on your business today, or you don't want to send emails, or if you feel like you don't want to reach out, or if you don't want to put out content. Okay, you might not feel like that. If you don't do it, if your business is currently set up where it's built around you and you only, then you might get stuck as the biggest bottleneck of your business if you don't have a way to delegate all of those aspects to someone else or to your own team. So that's where a lot of the mindset work comes in, of like understanding that, yes, if you just feel the way that you feel, and then you don't have a process or a system or a team to execute upon that so it can get done while you still feel the same way that you feel, then you will just get stuck in this rat race of like, oh, why isn't my business growing? Why isn't this going better? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Or like, Shlomo over there is doing better than me. Why? And then you start comparing. It's a trap. Okay. So mindset is everything, and being able to understand where you are now, where you want to go, so you can really execute with the fundamentals. That's where this book is truly designed. And I feel like it's going to be one of those books that once we finish it, and this is why I chose this book for the month of December, it's one of those books that you're going to look back upon, on a random Tuesday when you're, having a business meeting, and then you're going to remember something from your subconscious is going to pop up, and then you're going to be like, holy smokes, I'm doing what I need, what I said I was going to do, regardless of what it is that's going on in my life. And I'm able to execute upon that because I know the true intention behind everything. So I know that that's a huge, just mouthful of information. But now more than ever, if you're not being authentic with how you feel, or if you are not authentic with who you are and you're just trying to pretend, then you're not getting anywhere. People can read through that. Like, our culture, our society has learned how to consume video. They've learned how to consume copy. They've learned how to consume just interaction. So you have to get very clear on how you feel. And if you feel like you don't want to do something, learn how to have someone else do it. Learn how to get someone else to execute upon that, so your life can still maintain going and going and going, or business, whatever it is. That's why people hire nannies. That's why people have daycare. That's why people have chefs, people have nannies, people have people that come into their home, like the cleaners, and they execute upon that. They don't want to clean the house. They don't want to, cook a full freaking turkey or whatever it is that you're eating nowadays. They're being able to execute upon that because they don't feel like doing it, but someone else will, and someone is happy to do it. So make sure to get clear on what you don't want to do within your business so you can start executing upon that, and you're able to really enjoy what this life has to offer, which is a lot. Okay, there's a lot to enjoy once you get very clear on what you don't want to do, and once you get clear on what it is that you feel like doing. So with that, let's start with chapter number 2, level 5, which is leadership. And I believe this chapter, we're going to split it up into 2 because it's a quite juicy chapter. So let's get into it. We're going to start with a quote by Harry S. Truman. You can accomplish anything in life, provided that you do not mind who gets the credit. That's a deep one. Okay, that's a deep one. In 1971, a seemingly ordinary man named Darwin E. Smith became chief executive of Kimberly-Clark, a stodgy old paper company whose stock has fallen 36% behind the general market over the previous 20 years. Smith, the company's mild-mannered in-house lawyer, wasn't so sure the board had made the right choice. A feeling further reinforced when a director pulled Smith aside and reminded him that he lacked some of the qualifications for this position. But CEO he was, and CEO he remained for 20 years. What a 20 years it was. In that period, Smith created a stunning transformation, turning Kimberly-Clark into the leading paper-based consumer products company in the world. And under his stewardship, Kimberly-Clark generated cumulative stock returns 4.1 times the general market, handily beating its direct rivals, Scott Paper and Procter & Gamble, and outperformed such venerable companies as Coca-Cola, Hewlett-Packard, 3M, and General Electric. It was an impressive performance, one of the best examples in 20th century of taking a good company and making it great. Yet, few people, even ardent students of management and corporate history, know anything about Darwin Smith. He probably would have liked it that way. A man who carried no airs of self-importance, Smith found his favorite companionship among plumbers and electricians and spent his vacations rumbling around in his Wisconsin farm in the cab of a backhoe, digging holes and moving rocks. He never cultivated hero status and executive celebrity status. When a journalist asked him to describe his management style, Smith, dressed unfashionably like a farm boy wearing his first suit bought at JCPenney, just stared back at the other side of his nerdy-looking black-rimmed glasses. And after a long, uncomfortable silence, he said, eccentric. The Wall Street Journal did not write a splashy feature on Darwin Smith, but if you were to think of Darwin Smith as somehow meek or soft, you would be terribly mistaken. His awkward shyness and lack of pretense was coupled with a fierce, even stoic, resolve towards life. Smith grew up as a poor Indiana farm town boy, putting himself through college by working the day shift at International Harvester and attending Indiana University at night. One day he lost part of his finger on the job. The story goes that he went to class that evening and returned to work the next day. While that might be a bit of an exaggeration, he clearly did not let a lost finger slow down his progress towards graduation. He kept working full-time. He kept going to class at night. He earned admission to Harvard Law School. Later in life, 2 months after becoming CEO, doctors diagnosed Smith with a nose and throat cancer, predicting he had less than 2 years than a year to live. He informed the board, but made it very clear that he was not dead yet and had no plans to die anytime soon. Smith held fully to his demanding work schedule while commuting weekly from Wisconsin to Houston for radiation therapy and lived 25 more years, most of them as CEO. Smith brought the same ferocious resolve to rebuilding Kimberly-Clark, especially when he made the most dramatic decision in the company's history: sell the mills. Shortly after he became CEO, Smith and his team had concluded that the traditional core business, coated paper, was doomed to mediocrity. Its economics were bad and the competition weak. But they reasoned if Kimberly-Clark thrust itself into the fire of the consumer paper products industry, world-class competition like Procter and Gamble would force it to achieve greatness or perish. So, like the general who burned the boats upon landing, leaving only one option, succeed or die, Smith announced the decision to sell the mills in what one board member called the gutsiest move he'd ever seen a CEO make. Sell even the mill in Kimberly, Wisconsin, and throw all the proceeds into the consumer business, investing in brands like Huggies and Kleenex. The business media called the move stupid, and Wall Street analysts downgraded the stock. Smith never wavered. 25 years later, Kimberly-Clark owned Scott Paper outright and beat Procter and Gamble in 6 out of 8 product categories. In retirement, Smith reflected on his exceptional performance, saying simply, "I never stopped trying to become qualified for the job." Not what we expected, huh? Darwin Smith stands as a classic example of what we came to call a level 5 leader, an individual who blends extreme personal humility with the intense professional will. We found leaders of this type at the helm of every good to great company during the transition era. Like Smith, they were self-effacing individuals who displayed the fierce resolve to do whatever needed to be done to make the company great. Level 5 leaders channel their ego needs away from themselves and into the larger goal of building a great company. It's not that level 5 leaders have no ego or self-interest. Indeed, they are incredibly ambitious, but their ambition is first and foremost for the institution, not themselves. Wow. Kind of going to the first example, if you're not feeling up to par of doing whatever it is that you're doing, if you were Darwin Smith, he would be like, okay, I feel this way, but I'm still going to go do it, because it's for the company, it's for the institution, it's for the bigger mission here. It's not because I feel and I. The term level 5 refers to the highest level in a hierarchy of executive capabilities that we identified in our research. While you don't need to move in a sequence from level 1 to level 5, it might be possible to fill in some of the lower levels later. Fully developed level 5 leaders embody all 5 layers of the pyramid. And I'm not going to belabor all 5 levels here, as level 1s through 4 are somewhat self-explanatory and are discussed extensively by other authors. This chapter will only be focused instead on the distinguishing traits of a good to great leader, namely level 5 traits, and in contrast to the comparison leaders in our study. But first, please permit a brief digression to set an important context. We were not looking for level 5 leaderships or anything like it. In fact, I gave the research team explicit instructions to downplay the role of top executives so that we could avoid the simplistic credit to the leader or blame the leader thinking common today. To use an analogy, the leadership is the answer to everything. Perspective is the modern equivalent of God is the answer to everything. Perspective that held back our scientific understanding of the physical world in the Dark Ages. And in the 1500s, people ascribed to all events that they didn't understand to God. Why did the crops fail? God did it. Why did we have an earthquake? God did it. What holds the planets in place? God. But with the Enlightenment, we began the research for a more scientific understanding, physics, chemistry, biology, and so forth. Now that we became atheists, we have gained deeper understanding of how the world and how the universe ticks. Similarly, every time we attribute everything to leadership, we're no different from people in the 1500s. We're simply admitting our ignorance. Not that we should become leadership atheists, leadership does matter, but every time that we throw our hands up in frustration, reverting it back to, well, the answer must be leadership, we prevent ourselves from gaining deeper and more scientific understanding about what makes great companies tick. So early in the project, I kept insisting, ignore the executives, but the research team kept pushing back. No, there's something consistently unusual about them and we can't ignore them. And I'd respond, but the comparison companies also had leaders, even some great leaders. So what's different? Back and forth, the debate raged. Finally, as should always be the case, the data won. The good to great executives were all cut from the same cloth. It didn't matter whether the company was consumer or industrial, in crisis or in steady state, offer services or products. It didn't matter when the transition took place or how big the company was. All the good to great companies had level 5 leadership at the time of transition. Furthermore, the absence of level 5 leadership showed up as a consistent pattern in the comparison companies, given that level 5 leadership cuts against the grain of conventional wisdom, especially the belief that we need larger than life saviors with big personalities to transform companies. It is important to note that level 5 is an empirical finding, not an ideological one. Wow, that's big. That's really, really big. I take it as if you're not developing yourself as a better human being, as a better leader, as a better informer, communicator, persuader, you're letting down a whole opportunity, and I feel like when people do not take the time to just work on themselves, you start consuming other people. And if those other people haven't worked on themselves, you're just, receiving trash. And you're just dumping into the trash that you've created of yourself. But when you do have a leader in place and they don't take any trash from nobody, and they're being authentic and true and direct and intentional, then whenever you do have that person and you're able to see what's happening, what's going on, and you're able to have a positive reinforcer into anything. It could be a family member, it could be a great example in your family life, it could be a great example or in business, right? Now you have this North Star that as human beings we need to understand, because if we don't know where we're going, our compass is just going in circles. And then our survival mechanisms are not able to actually function. And as human beings, we're based on survival. Our mind is always set to, what's there to hurt me? Let's fight it. Then our heart is like, okay, I'm hurt, but let's try to mend ourselves. And then our flight or fight mechanisms within us allow us to move or stay back. So having that North Star is the level 5. Okay. And then level 5 is what they're saying, humility plus will. So humility being able to say, these people are not about themselves. They're in it for the bigger scheme, the bigger scope, the bigger vision. They're not in it for just you. They're not in it for just the group. They're not just in it for just the company. They're in it for what is at stake, a huge macro vision, right? Let's get into this. Level 5 leaders are a study of duality, modest and willful, humble and fearless. To quickly grasp this concept, think of the United States President, Abraham Lincoln, one of the few levels 5 presidents in the United States history, who never let his ego get in the way of his primary ambition for the larger cause of an enduring great nation. Yet those who mistook Mr. Lincoln's personal modesty, shy nature, and awkward manner as signs of weakness found themselves terribly mistaken. To the scale of 250,000 Confederate and 360,000 Union lives, including Lincoln's own. While it might be a bit of a stretch to compare the good to great CEOs of Abraham Lincoln, they did display the same duality. Consider the case of Coleman Mockler, CEO of Gillette from 1975 to 1991. During Mocker's tenure, Gillette faced 3 attacks that threatened to destroy the company's opportunity for greatness. 2 attacks came as hostile takeover bids from Revlon, led by Roland Perelman, a cigar-chomping raider with a reputation for breaking apart companies to pay down junk bonds and finance more hostile raids. The 3rd attack came from Coniston Partners, an investment group that bought 5.9% of Gillette stock and initiated a proxy battle to seize control of the board, hoping to sell the company to the highest bidder and pocket a quick gain of their shares. Had Gillette been flipped to Perelman at the price he offered, share owners would have reaped an instantaneous 44% gain of their stock. And looking at the $2.3 billion short-term stock profit across 116 million shares, most executives would have catapulted, pocketing millions from flipping their own stock and cashing in a generous golden parachutes. Coleman Mockler did not capitulate. Coleman Mockler did not capitulate, choosing instead to fight for the future greatness of Gillette. And even though he himself would have pocketed a substantial sums of his own shares, a quiet and reserved man, always courteous, Mockler had the reputation of a gracious and almost patrician gentleman. Yet those who mistook Mockler's reserved nature for weakness found themselves beaten in the end. In the proxy fight, senior Gillette executive reached out to thousands of individual investors and person by person, phone call, and won the battle. Now you might be thinking, but that just sounds like self-serving entrenched management fighting for their own interests at the expense of shareholders' interests. And on the surface, it might look that way, but consider 2 key facts. First, Mockler and his team staked the company's future on huge investments in radically new and technology advanced systems, later known as the sensor and Mach 3. Had the takeover been successful, these projects would have almost certainly been curtailed or eliminated, and none of us would be shaving with a sensor or a sensor for women, or even the Mach 3, leaving hundreds of millions of people to be a more painful daily battle with stubble. Second, at the time of the takeover battle, the sensor promised significant future profits that were not reflected in the stock price because it was a secret development. And with sensor in mind, the board and Mockler believed that the future value of the shares far exceeded the current price, even with the price premiums offered by the raiders. To sell out would have been a short-term share flippers happy, but would have been utterly irresponsible to long-term shareholders. And I just want to share with you a quick little diagram here. So at the time of this whole battle, if they would have gone through and did that deal, this is where they would have, had their little share, but then he just continued to move forward and did something significant, which we're about to learn. And that's how everything would have changed. In the end, Mockler and the board were proved right, stunningly so. If a share flipper had accepted the 44% price premium offered by Roland Perelman on October 31st, 1986, and then invested the full amount in the general market of 10 years through the end of 1996, he would have become 3 times worse off than a shareholder who had stayed in the Mockler and Gillette. Indeed, the company, its customers, and shareholders would have been ill-served had Mockler capitulated to the raiders, pocketed his millions, and retired to a life of leisure. Sadly, Mockler was never able to enjoy the full fruits of his efforts, and on January 25th, 1991, the Gillette team received an advance copy of the cover of Forbes magazine, which featured an artist's rendition of Mockler standing up at top of the mountain, holding a giant razor above his head in a triumphal pose, while the vanquished languish on hillsides below. The other executive razzed and publicly shied Mockler, who had likely declined requests to be photographed for his cover in the first place, amused at seeing him portrayed as a corporate version of a Conan triumph. Walking back into the office minutes after seeing the public acknowledgement of his 16 years of struggle, Mockler crumpled to the floor, struck dead by a massive heart attack. Wow. I do not know whether Mockler would have chosen to die in harness, but I'm quite confident that he would have not changed his approach as chief executive. His placid persona hid an inner intensity, a dedication to make anything he touched be the best that it could possibly be, not just because of what he would get, but because he simply couldn't imagine doing it any other way. It wouldn't have been an option within Coleman Mockler value system to take an easy path and turn the company over to those who would milk it like a cow, destroying its potential to become a great any more than it would have been an option for Lincoln to sue for peace and lose forever the chance of enduring great nation. Wow. Wow. That's powerful. That's really, really, really powerful. And to be honest with you, like that, think of right now who's running the show when it comes to business, when it comes to, I guess, social media, when it comes to just in general, like strength and authenticity and credible, legitimate business ethics, you know? A lot of what we see today in as soon as we open up our Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever it is that you want to do, everything is kind of like just trash, right? Trash meaning it might be great content and your attention span is stuck on the platform, but it's trash in the sense that it's keeping you away from actually pursuing what it is that you want to do. So think of people in your space right now that motivate you to actually get off being a consumer and start being a producer, being a creator, being a giver, then a taker. And then that is when you see an example of what a level 5 criteria is that they're looking to do. The reason why, Mockler had this massive heart attack was because he was working for over 16 years to get this entire thing up and running. And for him to just be almost kind of mocked on top of a mountain, holding the product that he was standing up for, it kind of ridiculed his ability to put into place everything. So sometimes the quietest, the shyest, the most least vocal people are the strongest, most willed individuals that can actually persevere through the craziest of obstacles. But when you put them into a different light, that is what kills them, literally in this case. And that's sad to see because that guy, wow, that's big, kind of leaves me kind of like questioning a lot of things. And I'm excited to get into the next part of this amazing chapter with you guys. And I hope you got a lot out of this chapter because I know I did. This book just keeps getting better and better. And it's a different type of read than what we've been listening to in the past. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because I need a challenge. I need to get rid of, a lot of limiting beliefs. I need to re-pour into me like structure. I need to re-pour into me. I need to get rid of all the trash, pretty much. I need to dilute any type of foggy water that's in my system. And to do so, I always need to challenge myself with something that's going to propel me forward. And this is one of the books that's going to do so. I had no clue about Mockler, but it helps me understand more about me. It helps me understand more about what I can become or what I can do, and just look at different people in a different light and appreciate them in a different way, and also look at people in a different way where it'd be like, actually, no, that's not for me. I can get out of that and I can move towards something that is going to benefit me and what I'm choosing to go for. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this read with me session. I know it was jam-packed with a lot of information, and I come into these particular read with me sessions with absolutely no agenda, but just to read, but also to share with you some insight of what can potentially help you understand more of what it is that I'm sharing. And our intention here at Billionaire Rhett is to help you through personal and financial freedom. It's great to read, but it's also really, really important to digest what you read, to grasp what you read, to discuss what you read. And that's how you actually help it penetrate through, and your consciousness and everything else. So I wish you the very best today, and congratulations on being on this journey. I'll talk to you soon and see you in the next Read With Me session.